The first thing you have to understand is that my apartment is way too big, and I'm kind of a clutter bug, so I lose stuff constantly. I've got 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and it's just me living here. I don't know what I was thinking when I moved in. Half the rooms I don't even use. They're just full of random junk and collectibles. Old furniture, clothes, knickknacks, and gewgaws. I like to rummage through antique stores and pawn shops and garage sales. My motto is you never know when you might need something. Like for instance, I live in a landlocked city, but I have an inflatable raft under my bed. King size. Because I like to stretch out, and it still barely fits. I've got a baby swing, a crib, and a bundle of infant clothes all stacked up in a corner behind the dining room table. I'm sure as hell not using those anytime soon. Unless I learn how to reproduce asexually. Or there's an old plow yoke that lives in the coat closet behind the 2 coats I actually use. I think I was planning on doing a rustic decoration theme at some point. Hard to remember. The main point is that it's not unusual for me to misplace things, or to find something in my stuff that comes as a total surprise to me, because I've forgotten I even have it. I almost had a heart attack the other day when a taxidermied iguana fell on my head while I was digging out some galoshes for the storm. Damn lizard left a scratch on my cheek that makes it look like I'm weeping blood. Now, I like the crowded, slapdash arrangement I have, the amusing surprises and helpful coincidences. Normally, I'm pretty blasé about losing anything. I've got 15 of everything I'd ever need, and the fun is in the finding and the getting, not the having. But the other day, I was having the worst sense of déjà vu, I guess. Some kind of obsessive disorder, maybe. I had a vision in my head of a jar. A very particular jar. Nothing special, really. Light blue ceramic, a couple of handles on the sides, with a little lid on top that I knew would open with a pop because I had a cork stopper. Almost like an urn. I had no idea where I would have gotten it or why, and I really wasn't sure why I wanted to find it so badly. But I became convinced that it was somewhere in my apartment, and I just couldn't rest until I found it. I tore apart the kitchen, 2 of the bedrooms, and most of the living room, opening drawers and dumping out old spectacles, silver state crest spoons, costume jewelry, an old set of manacles. I pulled a muscle in my back, shifting the old wardrobe around and finding a forgotten clothes press behind it. I found a stash of old mezzotints in frames and a really nice top hat. A big brass doorknob with matching key and a set of My Little Pony toys from the 80s. I even found a folder of schoolwork. Looked like elementary school age stuff. Not mine because the name was a girl's. No idea where that even would have come from. But I didn't find that jar. Finally, I was sitting on the floor amid a haphazard sprawl of vinyl records and cassettes, stewing over my failure. I wanted the jar so badly I could taste it. Dusty and dry, like the ghost of mildew. And then I realized how absurd I looked, pouting in the middle of the mess I'd made of my toys like an overgrown toddler, and I started laughing. I thought about calling out for a pizza, but I'd made a complete tangle of my already jumbled living space, and I was feeling a little claustrophobic. I decided to go out. Later, full of kebabs and a couple of beers, I was walking down a side street, taking a shortcut back to the subway, when I spotted a junk shop I didn't recognize. This, you might imagine, is a pretty rare experience for someone of my inclinations. I love a good junk shop. all the potential mystery and unknown stories in the objects for sale. I wasn't ready to go back and start the long process of cleaning up all the stuff I dumped out, so I turned aside and went in. The inside of the shop was startlingly brightly lit. You think of those places as having a couple of 30 watts flickering in dusty shades at best, but this one was as well lit as a big box store. Harsh light that threw tiny ink-black circles of shadow on the floor under every object. The man behind the counter caught my eye as I entered and smiled, big and wide. It was like he recognized me, but not as a friend. More like a dealer seeing his number one pillhead skating up with a fat roll. "Welcome back," he said. "You look like a man with a burden upon his life. I think you will find what you're looking for here." I'd never seen him before. He had the kind of face your eyes slide off of. Could be anywhere between 25 and 50. A middling skin tone that could have come from any place on 3 continents. A precise but empty accent that revealed exactly nothing. The stuff in the shop was pretty standard. Old books here, old records there, old clothes in the middle, and some spindly chairs in the back. And after the uneasy feeling the shopkeep gave me, I was losing my beer buzz and starting to feel disappointed. That's when I saw it behind the counter. Pale blue like a robin's egg. 2 small handles. Round stoppered lid. The jar. The one in my head. Here, in this random rubbish-filled store that I never heard of. I came up to the counter, but my mouth was too dry. I licked my lips and pointed, wide-eyed, at the jar. "Ah, you hear him calling." The shopkeeper smiled. "But it is a lie, as he is a lie." "How much?" I managed. "For the jar." He laughed. "The innocent jar? It is worthless. But for what is inside, I think, for you, a bargain can be made." I blinked. It was hard not to look at the jar. "What do you mean? What's inside it?" He looked side to side as though checking for spies, then leaned in and gestured me closer. "Nothing," he whispered gleefully, and laughed again. More of a cackle. It was getting on my nerves. "How much?" I snapped. "It does not matter much," he said, shrugging with one shoulder. "You would pay anything now, but money is meaningless. Tokens and trash, nothing but potential until it is used. Let us say $50. I already had my wallet out and slapped a 50 onto the counter. He caught my hand like a gecko snapping a cricket and held it down. "I think this will be the last time I tell you this," he said. "But it must be done. It must be done correctly. The innocent, from nosleep, meaning to harm, and in, meaning without. Nosleep from the older root neck." He stared at me, and his eyes were clear like glass. "Neck is death. In neck, deathless, eternity." He glanced to the side, and I saw the jar and moved to the countertop when I wasn't looking. The vessel. The vessel is empty. Do you understand? It has always been empty, and it always will be. What it contains is emptiness. No matter what you put in it, there will never be anything there, and you will never receive anything back. Nothing comes out of the jar. He tightened his grip, and I tried to pull away. Because there is nothing inside the jar. He released my hand so abruptly that I stumbled backwards. I was reeling a bit, thinking that maybe the beers had hit me harder than I thought. The next coherent thought I had was walking down the street to the subway station, feeling the chill of the autumn night and the even colder lump of the innocent jar cradled in my left arm. My right hand still stung where the shopkeep's fingernails had dug in. All the way home, I stewed over what had happened. I was freaked out, nervous. Not myself at all. He'd called me a man with a burden on my life. What the hell did that even mean? I had nothing at all to worry about. I had no responsibilities, no obligations. I had plenty of money. Didn't I? I seemed to. I was pretty sure I had. Where had it come from? I pushed the thought away as easily as I pushed open the door to my apartment building and stared up the stairs. Burdens, though. I used to have friends. College friends, work friends. Everyone has friends. I'm sure I had friends. But then, people drift. I remember everyone settling down, coupling up, getting children from somewhere. Children and mortgages, and career paths, and 2 weeks of vacation, if they were lucky. No more time. That's why I was lucky. That's why I hadn't tied myself down. I was free and easy. I'm sure I was. My stomach lurched. I felt like I'd swallowed a rock. Kebab meat must have been off. I went to sit down, but the couch was covered with half-tumbled boxes. I groaned and leaned over, placing the blue jar gently onto the cushions before I rested my hands on the couch's arm and back, and breathed through my nose, trying to soothe my innards. I smelled the dust and dry wood and old paper. Normally, some of my favorite things. But now, they just made things worse. I sat down onto the floor with a grunt. The jar tipped to the side, and I gasped in horror, running to catch it before it fell, before she fell and hurt herself. Something was buzzing around my brain, and I tried to wave it away through the mental fog. The chill of the hardened clay in my hands reminded me that I hadn't opened the jar yet. He said it was empty. Hadn't he? The lid resisted at first, but after a gentle twist, it slid out like it had been greased. I couldn't see inside the jar. Then I turned to face the light from the window. Still nothing. Dark as the bottom of the sea. I pulled the lampshade off of... it must have been a lamp on the side table, and turned it on. The blackness inside didn't move or react even as I moved the light source closer to it. And then it was gone. It went into the jar, but the jar was empty, and I couldn't remember what it was that I had been holding. It was not. It had never been. Because it was in the jar, and there is nothing in the jar. I only know it was a lamp because the shade is still here with me. I don't even know what it looked like, let alone where I'd gotten it or how long I'd had it, or what its story had been. I remember putting the jar down very, very carefully and putting the lid on top like I was deactivating a landmine. I knew I had most of a bottle of whiskey left because I had seen it when I was searching the kitchen, when I, for some godforsaken reason, wanted to find this damnable, terrible, terrifying jar. I proceeded to get extremely drunk while I tried to absorb the idea that I had some kind of portable black hole in a cheery baby blue jug. A memory hole. An oubliette. That's a type of dungeon. French word. Means forgotten. They threw you in, and the only door was the one at the top of the pit. And then you stayed there and never came out. Around about 2 a.m., the whiskey ran out. I sat in the dark without a lamp and cradled the jar on my lap like it was a child. My little girl. I looked around at the mess I still hadn't cleaned up, and suddenly I was angry. I had all the time in the world to myself, nothing to do, and nowhere to go, and all I'd done was collect all this stuff. This junk. This garbage. This fucking clutter. That's what he meant. That was my burden. I was wasting my time on all these things that I didn't even want. I started slow. Rolled up clothes and poked them in. Tossed the hangers in after. I know there used to be books in these shelves. There must have been. So those had gone in. I must have experimented with its capacity for size, because parts of the couch are missing. Things far too big to have ever fit through the tiny mouth of the jar, let alone inside it. But there's nothing in the jar, and there never will be, and nothing is infinite. Nothing is eternal. I remember laughing. I thought I was free before. After this, I'd be free as a bird, naked and flying forever. Nothing would save me. Things got a little crazy. The 2 bedrooms I mentioned before? I didn't bring up the third because it's completely empty, and I have no idea what used to be in it. Well, no, that's a lie. I know exactly what was in it. What was in it is nothing. Because whatever was there, I put in the jar, and there's nothing in the jar. It's early morning now, and I stopped because I found something in the empty room. I haven't put it in the jar. Not yet. It's a photograph. Not an old-timey one like I have so many of. A pretty new one, in a frame and everything. But the glass is cracked, so it must have been under something. It shows a man and a woman, a little girl who looks about 8, and another child about 2 or 3. They're on a beach. There's a boat in the background. They're all laughing and smiling for the camera. I don't recognize any of the people in it. No, that's a lie too. The man has my face. He has my face and his arm around this woman with the bigger girl. And he's smiling too. But I don't recognize him at all, except for one thing. His eyes. His eyes look like my eyes now, in the mirror in the hall of the bathroom, with the innocent jar sitting on the toilet bowl beside me. He looks tired. He looks frustrated and chained. He looks like he is lying. He looks like he's got a burden on his life. God, what did I do? He'd said, "Welcome back," the man at the store. He said he'd warned me before about the jar. What did I do? What did I put in the jar the other time I had it? Or was it times? Did they go one by one? Or all at once? Did they fight? Did they even know it was happening? That it had happened before? How much of their lives had I poured into that endless, infinite dark before I stopped being able to remember or imagine why I had a crib, a folder of schoolwork, a woman's scarf, and just left them where they lay? Oubliette has the same root as oblivion. Innocent can mean unknowing. God help me. I am sitting here with half of my life missing, and I don't know how much more, and the jar is beside me. It's cold. It's always cold on the outside of the jar. Will it be as cold inside, in the dark? I don't think so. I think it will be warm, like a nice bath at the end of a hard day. How much of me will go in before that stops mattering? To me? To anyone? I don't know if this will survive. I don't know if you will believe it. It was written by no one, after all. Because there is nothing inside the jar. Nothing at all.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below, and tell me what you thought of this narration. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for updates, and if you'd like to get early videos, shoutouts, and much more, I'd appreciate it if you check out my Patreon page. It's a place where you can help support my channel while getting awesome rewards in the process, and every pledge helps out a ton, no matter the size. So if you'd like to see all the rewards I offer and consider becoming a patron, it'd mean a ton to me if you'd click the link in the description and just check it out. And don't forget to show some love to the amazingly talented authors who make these narrations possible. Have a good night, everybody. Cheers.